Hello, my name is Jeffrey Nicholas. I'm an associate professor of philosophy at Providence College. This is the sixth in a series of lectures on Alasdair MacIntyre's Dependent Rational Animals, and we are looking at chapter 6 here, where he discusses reasons for action. So you may recall, if you watched earlier aspects of this lecture series, which I presume you did, that MacIntyre is trying to defend three theses in his discussion. So the first is that there is a resemblance to and commonality between human and non-human animals, and we have been exploring that over the last 5 lectures, and this will be another lecture in which we continue to explore that, but begin to move into the second and third theses. So the second thesis is that there are virtues of independence that go hand in hand with virtues of acknowledged dependence, and so part of the argument that we have been building up is that because we are animal, right, that our reason arises out of our animal nature, there are particular vulnerabilities of an animal concern that we have to be aware of, and that also possibilities that help form our ability to have language and to give reasons. And so we're going to look more at that in this chapter as well. And then third, there's going to be a critique of the modern nation state and the modern family that we are going to look at later. So MacIntyre begins this chapter by looking at the arguments from philosopher Anthony Kenney that animals cannot have reasons for action. And so this goes along with some of the earlier arguments that we saw first from the analytic side, that animals cannot have language for a variety of reasons. That animals cannot have beliefs for a variety of reasons that MacIntyre has dismissed. And from the continental side, that animals are poor in the world, and again, something that MacIntyre has dismissed. So now we have this other distinction that animals cannot have reasons for action because they do not have language. And without language, according to Kenney, an animal cannot evaluate what moves it to act. Now, Kenney thinks that he is taking his argument from Thomas Aquinas. And Aquinas writes that passing judgment requires reason. So if we are to evaluate ourselves, right, which this poor dog on the left here is trying to do, not in its own words, obviously, right, part of what that means is that when we evaluate ourselves, we require reasons. And this is part of MacIntyre's argument so far throughout this book, right, that becoming independent, practical reasoners means that we give reasons for the actions that we do, and that's not something that we're born with, but something that we develop from that initial bodily comportment that we have as babies, and that we continue to have even as adults, but we begin to learn to question our desires and then to give reasons for the ways that we act. Now, for Kenney, that requires language, and animals therefore cannot have any kinds of reasons. Now, MacIntyre says, let's stand back for a second and think about the features of practical rationality, right? And so the first feature is that it means that we stand back and evaluate our initial judgments, okay? So we see a piece of cake on the counter, and our initial judgment is, that looks delicious and I should eat it. But then we stand back from that initial desire and we evaluate whether it's a good thing for us to eat that cake when we just ate, 2 brownies, okay? Or maybe it's a good thing for us to eat the cake because we just came in from a run and we need to replenish our energy, okay? So the first feature of practical rationality is to step back and evaluate our initial judgment. And this does, in fact, require languages, because language has a particular sentence structure where we can include previous sentences or statements in future sentences, right? So I think I'll eat that piece of cake, right? And then I stand back and I said, should I eat that piece of cake, right? The second sentence contains the first sentence, right? And that's important for being able to make a judgment, right, for what we're going to do. So it's true that language is required for certain aspects of practical rationality, being able to evaluate our judgments. But in fact, non-human animals are moved by precepts just like human animals and can correct past behaviors without making those kinds of judgments. So those kinds of linguistic judgments. So Thomas Aquinas actually says, contrary to Kenney, that non-human animals have certain kinds of natural judgments that is a semblance to or an analogy to reason, right? So animals can have reasons for what they're doing. We don't know why this dog is holding all of these tennis balls there. Probably he doesn't want someone to take the tennis balls and he sees them as his. But perhaps he wants someone to play tennis ball with him, right? He wants to chase the tennis balls. But for whatever reason, the dog has a reason for holding those tennis balls there, right? And so there's a certain kind of judgment that the dog has, right? And it can feel guilty for holding the balls, or it can feel guilty for making Stinky stink, like the first dog that we saw in the picture in this lecture, okay? That is akin to or analogous to what we ourselves do when we reason, even though it's not the same thing because they do not have language. So contrary to Kenney, according to McIntyre, human and non-human animals have different kinds of reasons for action. Non-human animals have reasons then, right? So not all of our reasons for action, that is, not all of our human reasons for action, are in fact linguistic reasons, okay? So human animals reflect on their reasons. That's what's distinctive here. But in order for us to reflect on our reasons, some of those reasons are going to be pre-linguistic, pre-reflective, right? So we have reasons for actions before we actually reflect on them. And in many cases of our lives, we do not reflect on our reasons for actions. When the alarm goes off in the morning, we get out of bed, we take our shower, we brush our teeth, and we go and have breakfast and we go to work, right? We don't do those things because we're thinking constantly, oh, the alarm's going off, I need to get out of bed so that I can go earn money, right? We just do those things unconsciously, right, or pre-reflectively. And it's only when something happens where we begin to question what we're doing, perhaps we're unsatisfied with our job, or perhaps it's our anniversary, or for whatever reason we begin to question those reasons, and then we put them in linguistic form. And these pre-reflective reasons are the kinds of reasons that we share on McIntyre's account with dolphins and chimpanzees. And I think that's absolutely true, right? With the examples that we have seen with dolphins and that we can see with chimpanzees, they have kinds of reasons for doing the things that they do, okay? And so part of those reasons are tied up with the good of the nature of the animal species that it is, right? Dolphins hunt fish and chimpanzees run around the forest or will do whatever chimpanzees do. I'm sorry, that was terrible. Because of the kind of species that they are, and we do the kinds of things that we do because of the kind of species that we are, right? And that's true for a child, and to a great extent, it's true for the human animal as well. And so McIntyre proposes that instead of drawing a sharp demarcation between the human world and the non-human animal world, we should see this as a scale of relationships, okay? There is a range of sense perception from very primitive animals that have limited sense perceptions, and here I'm thinking of worms and fish and those sorts of things, to the kinds of sense perceptions that dogs and dolphins and cats have, okay, and chimpanzees have, right? And what we see in those other kinds of animals is an ability to pay attention to something, right? So we see that chimpanzees and dolphins and dogs pay attention to the things that either other dolphins and dogs and chimpanzees are doing or that human beings are doing, right? And in a way that fish are not going to do, right? And so some of this behavior exhibits intention on the part of the animal, right? So if you're holding the ball, the dog is going to look carefully and pay attention to what you're doing because it has an intention there, right? We know from the behavior of the dog whether it thinks that you're going to throw the ball for it to chase, or whether the dog thinks that you're going to hit the dog with it, right? And shame on you if you're going to hit a dog with a ball or in any way abuse a dog. Right, and it communicates that intention to others, and we recognize that intention in the way that the dog holds its body, right? And in fact, many non-human animals have an ability to withhold information and to give false signals, and we see that with dolphins, and we see that with ravens, and with chimpanzees, right? So there has to be a scale of relationship between animals that allows them that allows us to say these animals aren't capable of doing this, these animals can do it to a certain extent, and these animals can do it almost in the same way that the human animal can. And so what we understand here is that there's a certain kind of kinship between the human animal and non-human animals, right? And it's not just a bodily kinship. It's not just the fact that we have bodies and dolphins have bodies, and dogs have bodies, and whales have bodies. There's a certain form of way of life that we share with dolphins, right? We both have social relationships, as we can see here. So this is an example of where dolphins work with fishers in, I think this is in Brazil, to fish together, to hunt fish together, okay? And that's a social way of life that dolphins have with each other, and that they can share with human beings, and that human beings have with each other, and that they can share with dolphins, right? And so there are causal relations between animals and their environments that we share with many non-human animals, right? We get hungry, and so we hunt or fish or grow vegetables and pick the vegetables off of the trees. And dolphins get hungry, and they hunt and they fish. They don't pick vegetables, obviously. Or in many other kinds of ways, right? So we can talk about playfulness with dolphins, or we can talk about playfulness with humans, etc., etc. Right? And so some of the conditions for pre-linguistic rationality are found in human animals, right? And that presents a continuity of action and reasoning that we human animals share with non-human animal worlds, right? So many of our reasons are pre-linguistic because we are animals, okay? And human and non-human animals pursue their respective goods in cooperation with each other, so dolphins with dolphins and humans with humans, but also sometimes between different species. And here we have the lonely dolphin off the coast of Ireland, which comes out whenever this particular cell person comes out in his boat and follows along, and they play together. And the dolphin seems to have no friends with any other dolphins. And I sadly learned recently that this dolphin has not been seen for a while. The last time it was swimming out to the ocean and never came back. So they suspect that he has passed away, which is quite sad. But the fact that we can get sad over that dolphin, right, shows that there's this kind of continuity between the human animal world and the non-human animal world. If we were totally separate, we simply would never be connected in a way that would allow us to get sad. And that is actually part of the problem with the human relationship to nature today, is that we try to separate ourselves so much from it, and that we no longer have an emotional connection and even an empathetic connection with the non-human animal world and with the world of nature itself. And you can pursue more of those thoughts if you look at my forthcoming book, Love and Politics. Thank you.